بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجه الكريم. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll continue with our reading. Inshallah, we're going to try to get over the next, today's the last day. Tomorrow I will not be available. So over this week, we're going to try, inshallah, to finish this book within the next week or two. I would like to say within the next week, if we can. Inshallah, 187. Yeah, we have like 40 pages. I think we can do it. And then I'll summarize. Inshallah. Bismillah. We're on page 146. Let us try to get as much reading as possible. And I'm going to come back and then we're going to summarize all of these points and put them in some form that we can grasp, inshallah. Naam, go ahead. Bismillah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him, said, practical implementation of the way of non-specific figurative interpretation and specific figurative interpretation.
So this is ta'wil al-tafsili and ta'wil al-ijmali. So at-tafweed is non-specific figurative interpretation, which is called at-ta'wil al-ijmali. Specific figurative interpretation is a ta'wil, which is meant a ta'wil at-tafsili. Now,
the way of tafweed in light of the verse, Allah Ta'ala's yad is above their hands. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Allah Ta'ala's yad is above their hands.
This is in Surah 48, verse number 10.
From this verse, we understand a general meaning. Allah Ta'ala aids and assists the Muslims who pledge their fealty to the Messenger of Allah Ta'ala sallallahu alaihi wasallam with their hands. This meaning is clear-cut and obvious. Now, if the people of Tafweed are asked if this verse establishes the existence of a hand for Allah Ta'ala that is distinct from power, they would answer with the following. We do not delve into this verse any more than we have already spoken and established with certainty. We neither think about nor pay any attention to your question of whether this verse proves a hand for Allah Ta'ala, because the proof for such a thing is not clearly apparent from the verse itself. The primary meaning intended in the broader context of this verse is what we have just mentioned. We do not delve into anything beyond that. Rather,
which means that what is understood from Yadullahi Fawqa Aydihim is that Allah's aid in supporting them. That's understood. And there's no need to go into more than that.
We entrust knowledge of such things to Allah Ta'ala. He knows best what this verse indicates beyond the general meaning we have mentioned. So as you can see, those who believe in Tafweed clearly deny resemblance from Allah Ta'ala. This is the way of Tafweed. The scholars say that it is a general, non-specific interpretation, Ta'wil Ijmali. The way of figurative interpretation in light of the verse. Allah Ta'ala's yad is above their hands. First of all, the meaning mentioned by the people of Tafweed is undoubtedly correct. As for the question posed earlier regarding this verse and if it establishes the existence of a hand for Allah Ta'ala that is distinct from power, the people of interpretation would say the verse does not indicate that, hence a hand cannot be affirmed. Someone might say, so why do we read Allah Ta'ala's yad in the Quran if there is no proof for its affirmation? To this, the people of interpretation would respond, here, the word hand, quote unquote, is a metaphor to indicate assistance and aid. The use of this word as a metaphor is appropriate and fitting because the companions would outstretch their hands to prove their desire to aid and assist the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in spreading the call of Islam. The word, quote unquote, yad, hand, was applied as a metaphor and ascribed to Allah Ta'ala. This means that Allah Ta'ala assisted His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and those who pledged to defend this religion. This is the meaning of figurative interpretation.
which is at-ta'wil at-tafsili, the detailed uh, figurative interpretation. And we said at-tafwid, at-ta'wil al-ijmali was the way of the majority of the Salaf. At-ta'wil, meaning at-ta'wil at-tafsili, was the way of the majority of al-Khalaf. And what should be understood, some of the scholars of Salaf, they made the detailed ta'wil, and some of the scholars of Salaf, they made a brief ta'wil.
This is a summary of the two positions, those who adhere to the principle of figurative interpretation and those who adhere to the principle of tafweed. The people of tafweed do not claim ignorance of any meaning, even a general one, in the Quranic verses that pertain to the attributes. Now that this is out of the way, let us see how Ibn Taymiyyah explained their doctrine. He said, the one
So
who is
now you got the clear explanation of the methodologies of as-Salaf and al-Khalaf in relation to a non-specific interpretation, figurative interpretation, or a specific figurative interpretation. And you understood how they said it. Now, the author is going to mention what Ibn Taymiyyah, and when we say Ibn Taymiyyah, what is understood is those who follow the way of Ibn Taymiyyah in our time. Now,
the one who is unaware of this will utter confusing statements, such as the faction who says that interpretation is false and that it is obligatory to pass the words as they are, while using the verse, and none
they
knows its
are meaning ala dhahirihi, according to their apparent literal meaning.
while using the verse, and none know its interpretation except Allah Ta'ala as a proof. They use this verse to prove the falsehood of interpretation, yet this is a contradiction on their part. This entails that there is an interpretation unknown to any but Allah Ta'ala, but they completely negate interpretation. The reason for this error is because the interpretation which Allah Ta'ala has preferred in His knowledge is the reality which none know but He, but none know. I'm sorry, which none but He knows. Excuse me. And those who negate interpretation completely, using as evidence the words of the Exalted, and none know its interpretation except Allah Ta'ala, might think we have been addressed in the Quran with things that no one understands, or which has no meaning, or which cannot be understood. Besides being false, this is also contradictory. If we do not understand anything from it, then it is not allowed for us to say it has an interpretation that goes against the outwardly apparent meaning. And that is because of the possibility of it having a correct meaning that does not oppose the apparent meaning known to us. Based on this view of theirs, it has no apparent dhahir. Its indication of that meaning is not an indication of something against what is apparent. It is not interpretation. Based on this estimation, it is not permissible to negate its indication of meanings we do not know. That is because we might be unaware of these meanings which are indicated, and also if we do not understand the word and what it does indicate, then, a fortiori, we would not know the meanings it doesn't indicate. The allusion of a word to what is meant by it is stronger than its allusion to what is not meant by it. So if an expression contains no allusion to any meaning or understanding from it whatsoever, it cannot allude to what is meant by it. If it cannot allude to what is meant by it, then, a fortiori, it cannot allude to what is not meant by it. Therefore, it is not permissible to say that this word is interpreted, meaning it is taken away from the preponderant meaning, al-ihtimal al-raji, to a non-preponderant meaning, much less saying it has an interpretation that no one knows but Allah Ta'ala, unless, of course, interpretation here means that which opposes the apparent meaning specific to creation. Undoubtedly, one who intends this by the word interpretation must have an interpretation that opposes that apparent meaning. As we have mentioned, Ibn Taymiyyah
So that's
said,
the end of Ibn Taymiyyah's quote. Go ahead.
Ibn Taymiyyah said that some people believe there is no understanding of any meaning of the ambiguous verses. If they do indeed believe that, then they read the
And when we
Quran.
say the ambiguous verses, what is also entailed are the ahadith al-mutashabiha. So the verses and the hadith, that relate to those attributes of Allah that can bear more than one linguistic meaning. Mm.
If they do indeed believe that, then they read the Quran yet understand no meanings from it. Ibn Taymiyyah said this group negates interpretation and does not believe in any apparent meanings. That is what he meant when he said, and that it is obligatory to pass the words as they are. This means that they pass the expressions on as they appear and do not understand any meaning from them whatsoever. Some ignorant people among the anthropomorphists imagine this to be the reality of Tafweed, and that the way of some of the Ashadi scholars and people of truth. We have already explained that this is not what is meant was excuse me. We have already explained that this is not what is meant by Tafweed according to us. On the contrary, the way of Tafweed is to believe in the clear-cut universal meaning of a Quranic verse, avoid delving into details, and to relegate its knowledge to Allah Ta'ala. As you can plainly see, this understanding of Tafweed is not as Ibn Taymiyyah described it. As was
In other words,
customary,
we understand from it a general meaning that befits Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. We affirm the attribute and we don't go into details about it, and we relieve its complete reality to Allah. That is totally different from saying there's no meaning to the word and it has no purpose. No one says that. That is, you're not going into specifics about it, to details about it. Mm.
as was customary for Ibn Taymiyyah, he explained the doctrine of Tafweed according to his own intent and not the intent of those who actually believe in it. This is something he did frequently when disputing with his opponents. He would explain the positions of his opponents in a manner that they did not believe, so as to give himself the chance to rebuke them as he wished.
They call that a straw man's argument, right? You make a point that someone didn't make, and you refute that point as if you're refuting them, right? So I remember having a discussion with one person. He said that the Ash'aris only believe in 7 or 13 attributes. And then he said they deny all the attributes of Allah. And he started to refute that. And I stopped him. I said, what Ash'ari ever told you that? He looked at me as if, and he went to make a point. He was haughty about it. No, I'm laughing because you should have saw his face when I said that to him. It was like, he looked at me like, what kind of Ash'ari are you? It was so funny. His face was like, because he said, and I studied this with the Council of Scholars in Indonesia, I think he said, or Malaysia, one of them. And the high court and the leader of them, who was an Azhari. And I said, whoever told you that? I said, according to the Ash'aris, the one who says that Allah has only 7 or 13 attributes is a disbeliever. So how did you get that? By the agreement of the Ash'ari, the Ash'aris. Someone who says that Allah only has 7 or 13 attributes is a disbeliever. How did you go from there to say that the Ash'aris say Allah only has 7 or 13 attributes? I said, what you misunderstood was that they said that these attributes are essential for every morally responsible person to know because they can be known by the intellect. So you have to know them, and because they are necessary attributes of godhood that can be known by the sound mind. Not that Allah only has those attributes, but there are some attributes you only know by transmission. That's the only way to know them. Others you can know by the sound mind. that Allah is attributed with them because they're necessary attributes of Godhood. Then there are other attributes that the sacred law conveyed that you wouldn't know that if you didn't know it through the Quran and the Sunnah. I say you misunderstood. Totally. But you were refuting something that was never said. So what do we learn from this? Number one, we should learn what a person is actually saying and try to understand what they're saying, and then based on that proper understanding, respond. Right? So if we're going to mention something being wrong, we need to understand that the one we're claiming holds that conviction actually holds it. Right? Then from that, we can build on it. Not make a straw man's argument and say, you believe this, and since you believe this, this is wrong, so you're wrong. Well, in the first place, I don't believe that. So what are you talking about? So your whole argument is built on a fallacy, because I don't believe that. Right? So to say the Ash'aris deny Allah's attributes is false. That's not what the Ash'aris believe. No Ash'ari would deny any of Allah's attributes. In fact, according to the Ash'aris, to deny Allah's attributes is blasphemous. So that's not so that understanding is totally incorrect. Right? From the start. Now, what do the Ash'aris deny? They deny your literal interpretation of the attributes of Allah. They deny that. Yes, that is true. Because the Ash'aris believe that to apply the literal meaning of those words that have not been narrated in the Quran and Sunnah as attributes of Allah, and the literal meaning is the meaning that rushes to the mind of human beings, which is a anthropomorphic meaning, is not the correct meaning of the verses or those words when applied to Allah. That's the Ash'ari's belief. Now, if you say they deny that, that's true. But to transfer to say they deny Allah's attributes because they deny your wrong interpretation of them is another story. Is this point clear? Okay, go ahead, inshallah.
If we assumed, for argument's sake, that there are some people who do not understand any meaning, general or detailed, from the ambiguous verses, that would not call for them being greatly reproached. The most to be said regarding them is that they were ignorant of their meanings, so they relegated knowledge of them to the one who revealed the Quran. The most this implies is that they were ignorant of what others knew, but they did not fall into any grievous errors regarding Allah Ta'ala. They did not say He is a corporeal body or that He is contained in a direction, limited, moving, sitting, and touching His throne and creation, and that
All right, so look at
contingents.
this. They did not say, this Ahl Sunnah, they did not say Allah is a body. They did not say Allah is in a direction. They did not say Allah is limited. They did not say created entities dwell in the self of Allah. They didn't say Allah moves or He sits or He comes in contact with His creation or the arsh. All of those things, Al-Sunnah, Al-Ash'ira, wa Maturidiyya negate. All of those things, Ibn Taymiyyah affirmed. All of those things, the followers of Ibn Taymiyyah and Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab in our time, they confirm. So there's the distinction. Now, from the verses of the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, they came up with those conclusions, which the Ash'ira and Maturidiyya say those conclusions should not be taken from those verses or those hadith. There is the great distinction between those two beliefs. For all of us, do we understand that this is the red line in the sand between Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah and those who carry a different belief. Is this red line clear for everyone? Is there any ambiguous thing towards understanding this for anyone that needs to be clarified? Farouk, the Wahhabiyya, they don't do ta'wil according to them. They take the literal meaning that comes to one's mind as the intended meaning. They don't agree with, they consider ta'wil denying the attributes of Allah. So anyone who tells you, as a note, anyone who tells you I'm Ahl Sunnah and tries to reconcile these corrupt beliefs with the belief of Ash'ari and Maturidi, they are a fraud and a liar and an untrustworthy person, or they don't understand. That could be also the other part. So if you got a person telling you, oh, these are all the same, they don't understand. Or they have another agenda other than spreading the correct creed of Ahl Sunnah. Right? Because you have some people that are trying to merge this corrupt creed with Ahl Sunnah through al-fiqh. Right? They are merging this corrupt creed through with Ahl Sunnah through al-fiqh by the name of Athari. So they don't say Wahhabi, they don't say Salafi, they say we Athari. But they carry this corrupt creed. And then they say we're Athari Maliki. And this is unique among people claiming to follow the madhab of Imam Malik. I'm pointing it to you. It's specific to them. And it is something that is happening in their school that in the history of the Maliki school didn't happen. But in our time is happening. The Malikis historically were the most strong Ash'aris among the four schools, were the Malikis. And everyone who follows the Maliki madhab in our time, and they read the major books of the Maliki scholars, the major reliable books in the Maliki school were all 100% Ash'aris. No doubt about it. And the one who doesn't realize that is not a Maliki, no matter what they claim. There is no compromising in the creed. Don't tell me you Maliki and you're flimsy in Aqidah. You're not a Maliki. You're claiming to follow the Maliki school. The books of the Malikiyah are explicit Ash'ari texts. Imam al-Laqani was Ash'ari. Imam Dardir was Ash'ari. All of the major scholars of Ahl Sunnah among the Maliki were Ash'ira, with no exception among them, as Tajuddin as-Subki mentioned in his Tabaqat. So this new Maliki stuff, this new idea of changing the creed of Ahl Sunnah to compromise the principles is not the Maliki madhab. In no way. I say that with firmness because this game is being played. Read the books of the scholars of Ahl Sunnah. Read the most authentic, relied upon, trustworthy books in the Maliki school. They were Ash'ari, no doubt. No doubt. That is not up for debate. Period. That is not up for debate. And anyone who debates that, they are not Maliki. Even if they say it 1,000 times, even if they pray with their hands down to the side, they are not following the school of Imam Malik. So watch it, watch it, watch it. There's a lot of games being played. Protect yourselves. Protect yourselves. And these matters are important because these things are being promoted in our community and we cannot remain silent. We cannot remain silent. And trust me, we have the books of the Maliki school. We have Maliki Shuyukh, real teachers, living teachers. Not this I do myself stuff. We have real scholars who are Maliki with an unbroken chain of narration that they're just a phone call away. Our friends and fellow students live with these scholars. Our teachers are colleagues of these scholars. You cannot play with Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. La. If you want to compromise principles, that's you. Don't put it on the madhab of Imam Malik. Imam Malik is free from that. And the madhab is free from that. And Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is free from that. This is the truth that cannot be denied. And the books and the scholars are living today, and both of them, both the scholars and the books, have reached us with unbroken connected chains. Even though I'm Shafi'i, don't think I don't know about the Maliki school, because we do. We do. We're Ahl Sunnah. Our chains reach. Yes, we're Ahl Sunnah. This is Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. It's a protected methodology. You can't pervert it. Let it be known and clear, this issue. Because many of us are, because we don't have teachers, because we're not studying in the proper way, things are being mixed up by charlatans in the name of the deen. By people who are pretenders to Islamic knowledge and are not humbled enough to say, I don't know, and I should sit down and learn. I am too arrogant to sit down and learn. I want to be a leader. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. You should sit down and learn. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then sit down and learn and then become a leader. Sit down and learn and then become a leader. And when you become a leader, still sit down and learn. Sit down and learn. Put your ego to the side and sit down and learn. Sit down and learn. Go ahead.
It is my opinion that the people of absolute tafweed, if they really exist, are much less harmful than Ibn Taymiyyah. They are cautious regarding those things that they do not know, and they relegate the meanings of the verses to Allah Ta'ala. On the other side, we have Ibn Taymiyyah, who disputed regarding Allah Ta'ala's entity and did not stop until he fell into resemblance and anthropomorphism. It is as if he preferred to declare himself free of ignorance rather than to declare his Lord free of resemblance and corporeality. He was not pleased with the doctrine of absolute tafweed because it would have meant ascribing ignorance to himself regarding the meaning of the Quranic verses. On the other hand, he was pleased to claim that the verses indicate meanings of resemblance. All of this is, of course, assuming that there actually exist people who believe in absolute tafweed and understand no meaning whatsoever from the ambiguous verses. As we have mentioned, even if this group exists, they do not represent the way of the scholars of truth from the Ash'aris, who believe in tafweed regarding the detailed meanings and affirm the general meanings, while unequivocally negating resemblance and corporeality from Allah Ta'ala. Their tafweed is only regarding the detailed meanings. They did not take a stance of tafweed when it came to negating corporeality or affirming divine transcendence. We do not agree with Ibn Taymiyyah's claim that the interpretation in the verse is the external reality, al-haqiqa al-kharija.
Let's stop
Un-
there. Let's stop there. Ala kulli hal. Where is it? Where is your in English?
Page 150, the last paragraph at the bottom.
Are we moving? Oh, we okay. All right. Do you have 1 minute? Not 1 minute.
Yes, I do.
Let's read this to the next principle number 6. Let's read the rest of this. I didn't know we were that close. So it's just 2 pages and we can finish.
We do not agree with Ibn Taymiyyah's claim that the interpretation in the verse is the external reality, al-haqiqa al-kharija, unknown to any but Allah Ta'ala. We believe that interpretation is to utilize semantical and circumstantial elements to move the mind away from the meaning that first appears to it due to its involvement in human customs and creation, and connect it with a meaning that befits the divine entity. If the meaning indicated is an expression, as Ibn Taymiyyah claimed, refers back to the external reality that is unknown to all but Allah Ta'ala, does this not imply that the meaning is also unknown to all but Him? Thus does not imply that Ibn Taymiyyah's words are interpreted to correspond with those he found blameworthy, the people the people of absolute tafweed. The truth of the matter is that Ibn Taymiyyah did not believe we are unable to understand any meaning from the verses whatsoever. On the contrary, he claimed that we only understand resemblance, tashbih, from the verses. So according to him, istiwa is understood to mean sitting, being seated, and loftiness of direction, all of which indicate a limit. According to him, 2 hands, yadan, 2 eyes, ainain, shin, sak, foot, qadam, and flank, jamb, are all understood to mean body parts and limbs. These meanings, which Ibn Taymiyyah claimed were indicated in the Quranic verses, are nothing but resemblance and anthropomorphism.
And remember this body that Ibn Taymiyyah has in his mind is not a physical thing that he puts in front of you. It is something that is arranged in the mind. So it is a jism that is, you can say, latif. It cannot be perceived with the senses, right? It's not a physical thing like an idol. La, it's something that is in the imagination. But it's not specified in its direct, explicit definition. So it is a real hand, but what that hand is actually like is not defined. It is a real face and a real shin and a real side and real sitting, but it's not defined, meaning the kayfiyya, the modality, is not known to us. And this is what is rejected by Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Whereas the belief of Ahl Sunnah is whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is completely different from that. Even if you don't specify what you imagine. Is this clear? Go ahead.
Ibn Taymiyyah said that the verses contain an apparent and known meaning, and that correct meaning does not oppose the apparent that is known to us. According to Ibn Taymiyyah's claim, these so-called apparent meanings mentioned in the paragraph above correspond to Allah Ta'ala's reality in so much as they are the correct and intended meanings of the Quranic verses. Therefore, his view is that the meanings understood from the verses are meanings of resemblance, corporeality, and limits, not meanings of divine transcendence, which is the view of Ahl Sunnah.
No.
Look at Ibn Taymiyyah's cunning in how he said, so it is not permissible to say that this word is interpreted, meaning it is taken away from the preponderant meanings, al-iktimal al-raji. to a non-preponderant meaning. Do those who believe in interpretation explain it as taking a word away from its preponderant meaning to a non-preponderant meaning? If they conceded that a certain meaning is preponderant, how could they allow themselves to prefer the non-preponderant meaning, and what is their evidence for such a thing? Could there be any other reason besides base desires to motivate someone to take a word from its preponderant meaning and give it a non preponderant meaning? Is this not the exact thing Ibn Taymiyyah wished to attribute to those who believed in figurative interpretation?
Detailed,
Always saying,
specific figurative interpretation. Right? That's what is intended. Now,
always saying they interpolate the verses of Allah Ta'ala, deny their meanings, and follow their vain desires. I have always asked myself, how could Ibn Taymiyyah describe all of the scholars among the people of truth with these descriptions just because they believed in figurative interpretation? How could any fair minded individual say such heinous things that cause injury to the majority of the scholars in this ummah? Why are his followers silent when he accused the bulk of scholars with these enormities? The only answer I can conclude is that Ibn Taymiyyah was a follower of his desires. Here, his desires are made plain when he misrepresents the doctrine of those who believe in figurative interpretation and explains it in a way they reject, negate, and oppose. When Ibn Taymiyyah misrepresented it,
I want to make a quick point here. Our religion, as I mentioned in the scattered thoughts, is reached through the scholars. Listen, all of us, all of our statements in our time should be weighed in agreement with the scholars who came before us and the books, the relied upon trustworthy books that have reached us through the routes of those scholars back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In other words, if it is not a new issue that never existed before, then our practice, our convictions should be in accordance with the succeeding generations of Muslims back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the majority of this nation is always going to be on the right path. So if none of us existed, so you don't need, for instance, me. All I should do is point you to what our scholars convey that you may not be aware of and show you in their books and explain to you what we learn from living teachers as explanations of those books that match explanations that were given by the author and his students all the way back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's our function. As for coming up with our own novel approach to the religion, this is rejected. And even if it's a new issue, the one who's giving the judgment in that new issue should be a master in the sources and interpretation and methodology of the sacred law, which is none of us, right? So we always need a reference point, right? That's why we stick to books, right? Because at the end of the day, if I make a mistake, you have references, scholars to check my mistakes. Because I'm human, I can make mistakes, right? I hope not to make big ones, but I can make mistakes. But if you understand our scholarly tradition, our transmitted books, and those things, you'll catch my mistakes and you just fix them, and then you bring them to my attention. That was a mistake. Okay, let me fix it. Where was the mistake? Okay, let me fix it. No problem, right? That's not difficult unless we have something else in our minds, right? We're only people of transmission, ahlul naql in this sense. We're transmitting. We're not making it up as we go along. We're transmitting what we received, right? That's it. Now, go ahead.
When Ibn Taymiyyah misrepresented the position of his opponents and convinced himself that they actually believed in that misrepresentation, it was easy for him to describe them with interpolation, denial, and following base desires and passions. As for his followers, they are further from justice and more ignorant than animals asked about their black fur spots. They lost themselves the moment they chose to take Ibn Taymiyyah as their reference point in knowledge, and his books as the source from which they understand the doctrine of their opponents. It is abundantly clear that Ibn Taymiyyah was untrustworthy when citing the doctrines of the various schools of thought, and it is clear that he would misunderstand their positions, especially when refuting them. Since having taken it upon myself to examine his works and comment on them, I have lost all confidence in his citations. As for Ibn Taymiyyah's
Good.
As for Ibn Taymiyyah's making an exception to figurative interpretation if it means something that opposes the apparent meaning specific to creation, it does not indicate or prove his negation of resemblance, because he said that direction, place, indwelling of contingents, limits, and limbs are not specific to the creation. He believed that these things are shared between the Creator and the creation. Perished be this belief of his.
Subhanallah. And we'll stop here. But I want to share something too quickly. Sis, if you need to depart, we are done. I just want to make a few points. May Allah reward you. Please make dua for our reader, her family, and all the sacrifices she makes to assist in our effort of educating ourselves. May Allah reward her. We greatly appreciate her time, her energy, her expertise in reading, and may Allah raise her rank, inshallah. Let me take a few of these questions real quick before I make my statement. Farouk, I don't know what is Ruk in Jamaat. I don't know what you're talking about. I know nothing about it. I don't know what that means. Ruk in Jamaat. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you're talking to somebody else. You're not talking to me. I don't know. Can you explain the danger of Ibn Taymiyyah book, Al-Aqidah al-Wasatiyah? It's the same thing that's in this text. Anthropomorphism, a tajsim, and a tashbih, likening Allah to his creation. The same issue. This is a book of his creed, has the same issues, same thing. So if you understood these issues, they're in the other book as well. It's all the same. Literal. So that's the issue there. I really want to give you something, right? While we talk about uplifting our community and empowering ourselves, we have to do that through learning. And that's going to be staged. It's not going to happen overnight, right? We are missing a lot, right? Seriously, we have a lot of gaps in our learning. And it's going to take us generations to fix and fill those gaps, right? We have a lot to learn, a lot of information that has not been given to us, right? And honestly, we don't have enough lifetime or financial stability to do the research that is necessary to do the work that we need to do at this stage, right? We need to have people that have the ability, that are dedicated their entire life to research and learning and teaching. And one is not enough. But I don't think we realize what it takes to do what we're trying to do. As a whole, some of us do. But all of us have to play a role in that. We're always going to have half-baked imams and teachers like myself. I put me in it. Yes, I put me in the bunch. So I know some people got big, long feet, and they think you're going to step on their toes, but their feet are so big, no matter where you step on their toes. I know there are some people like that, right? So I'm going to put myself, so you understand I'm not just talking about you. I'm included. If we're ever going to have real scholarship among our people, we have to invest in that. We have to. We got a lot to learn. And it's something that we got to start taking serious. Learning, researching, acquiring. People have to be dedicated to that for future generations. This do-it-yourself, as we go along, default scholar, default imam. Listen, Habibi, I'm not being humble. Half-baked imams. I'm counting among them, not putting myself like, no, this is true. We're not what we need. We're what we're forced to deal with because of our neglect of Islamic learning and scholarship. We are not what we need. We are what we're forced to accept because we refuse to invest in ourselves and build the level of our Islamic learning and scholarship. Do y'all heard what I said? That's serious. And all of us should be, I don't want my children in the condition that I am in. I want a better condition. That means we have to do something. We have to do something better. I want to share something with you. I was thinking about this. Give me a second. Are y'all following me? I want to show you something. Right? We are fixing, and we're not complete, but we're fixing our library in the Masjid, right? I want to show you something. I want to just give you a quick tour. This book wall here is just books of tafsir of the Quran. That's it. Tafsir and the sciences of the Quran. Right? That's this wall there. This side over here is just Hanafi fiqh. Right? Hanafi school, just some. This over there, Maliki school. Maliki. Different books in Creed. I'm showing you something for a reason, right? Then, if you go here, the lights are out. We're talking about books in science of hadith and narration of hadith and different aspects of spirituality and aqidah. right? Books of narrating, just hadith, all the way down. If I come over here, this whole wall, from there all the way down, and it's close, it's just in the madhab of a Shafi, because we are Shafi, so you'll notice it's way more Shafi books, right? All of this stuff and more needs to be studied for our children. Right? Just for our children. We have to learn all of this stuff for future generations. You can imagine how long that's going to take if we're not dedicated to it. If we're not dedicated to studying, you can imagine how long that's going to take. If you understand my point. We need someone whose life is doing that. That's what they do. That's their life, nothing else. They are researchers. That we say, we need this issue came up, this school, that issue, this and this spirit, these books of the scholars. We need in our community people, that's all they do. That's a lifetime work as a researcher. And then teachers, and we need that in our own communities. Not just we have books, but people who actually know how to navigate and use those books and bring that information out. Do you understand what I mean? I'm just giving you what we got to do. And we don't have the time to do it. We don't. We got to go earn a living. We got to take care of our families. We don't. In the Islamic world, in every country, they got people that's dedicated for that. They're dedicated for that. That's what they do. That's not a one-man effort. There are teams that research. That's not a one-man's effort. We have a long way to go. We got guys, us half-baked imams, acting like we scholars with nothing. With nothing. And that doesn't, we're doing the best we can. I got that part. But what I'm saying is we can't stay there. We're doing the best we can with what we have. I got that part. But it's not enough. We have to get serious. And even if we can't do it, we have to make a route for the succeeding generation to do it. And we have to get out the way and know our limits. Get out of the way. Make way for the more learned people and provide a platform for them to do what they got to do, because it's about all of us, not just one of us. That's my point. And I got us acting like you the man. I got that. It feels good, but you're not the man, and you know it. And what you should be doing, instead of trying to be the man, lay a foundation so you can make the man. What you should be doing, instead of trying to be the man, lay a foundation so that you can make the man. If you understand what I'm saying. Because you're not the man, and you're not going to be the man. The nature of life going to ensure that you never be the man. It's not going to happen if we just be realistic. And if it happens to you, that's a karama. And you ain't that pious to have that karama. Just being honest. We know each other. We're not that pious like that. So let us do our part. Stop harming and let's try to make a difference. We have work to do, serious work. If not, we're going to be sitting here, our children, not us, we'll be dead. And we'll be still talking the talk of that letter of Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz another 60 years from now. And that would be a crime for us to do our children like that. We've moved on and we've got some progress, but we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. Let's not delude ourselves. We have not arrived. We have not arrived. We have a lot of work to do. We're still building the foundation necessary for this house. We're not even building the house yet. We're still setting up the foundation. No, it's a lot of work, seriously. And all these games we be playing is hurting us. It's not helping us. We're not moving forward. We're not moving forward. We're nonsense. Really, a lot of game playing. And we're losing our children while we're playing games. So may Allah make it easy. And I just showed you that so you can see how much we have to do. I'm only showing you that so you will know we have a long way to go. We ain't even start. Because all those books on those shelves have to be studied, have to be taught, have to be conveyed. It's information that we need. That's what we got to do. And that's a job, man. That's a job. That's a career. That's a lifetime career. We have work to do. We can't play around. We can't sit around playing games. We don't got time. We have serious building to do. And at the same time, the enemies of Islam, outside of Islam and within Islam, is trying to prevent us from doing that work. So don't think we're just free to do it. No, we gotta combat those who wish to stop the whole mission of Islam altogether. So raise our aspirations. We have work to do. May Allah reward you. Tonight at 7:30. Yeah, 7:30. Sheikh Yahya will continue in his book, The Seven Hadith. Inshallah. May Allah give us success. May Allah help us. May Allah allow us to do what we need to do and to be focused and to do what we have to do. It's a lot of work. And may Allah replace us with people who are better than us, more pious than us, more learned than us, more energetic than us, more sincere than us. May the next generation be able to carry this banner. We need it. We need it. And all of us have to do our part. All of us have to do our part. Barakallahu bikum wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.